Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer, and this is Strange Mosaic. And just a few weeks back, we had an excellent episode with my comrade, Daniel Berdichevsky, who's with us here today. And we just barely started to scratch the surface of a bunch of topics, and we decided we'd meet up again. So this is sort of a part two or a second round here with Daniel. And I want to tell you, Daniel, before we get started with anything else, that I got so many compliments on you and on the episode with you, and people really enjoyed it, from some people, like very long time listeners, not only of my show, but of the stuff I did with Randy before this and whatnot. People really appreciated the episode. So I just wanted to let you know that. And we all warmly welcome you back. So glad to have you with me today. How you doing?
I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you so much. And I'm glad to be back. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay. So a couple of things. I like to wear sometimes like specific spiffy shirts for shows. And generally, like I like to wear shirts that either like it's kind of something cool from wherever I am, or maybe they say something I think is neat. There's like a certain kind of shirt that I like, right? And so when I'm looking for things to wear on the show, I'm looking for a specific kind of shirt. And if I have a new shirt, I usually wear it for the first time on my glass bead game with Michael Wan that I do. But I today have a special shirt for you, because there was like a topic that came up just tangentially in our last episode that then proceeded to sort of take over everything that I did for the next several weeks. And that was this little idea that birds might not be real, right? And
yeah,
we talked about that, and it's not lost on me that your last name is Berdichevsky, right? A little different spelling of bird, but oftentimes there's these sort of symmetries between things. So today I have a special shirt that I'm wearing for the first time with you.
All right.
Free as a bird. Free as a bird. Kids, birds might not be real, and neither might freedom be, right? So I thought it was, and we have our communist dictator in chief here to tell us about that, right? So I love listening to people comment on your hat and assume that you're a communist. I saw some little like back and forth between you and a listener on one of your recent videos that was like asking if you were Marxist and if you supported BLM or right? So anyhow,
nothing could be further from the truth. I am the opposite of communist, but okay, yes.
I love the hat, and I love playing with the, the obvious opposition to reality, right? So anyway, so we've got the free like a fake bird here shirt up for the show. And
don't forget that so Berdichevsky, the last three letters are SKY, so bird sky.
Yeah. That's it. I didn't catch that one. I have to tell you, like, I just brought it up tangentially because I had seen that sticker in the episode, right? And you started telling me about your owl. And then I started to play with the idea, and it ended up becoming the topic of a number of shows, right? And everybody agrees that when you first say it, it sounds ridiculous. But every person who first told me it was ridiculous, within like 1 week of hearing about it, would come back with some very strange story about this bird that's doing something very strange around them ever since they got the idea in their head that birds might not be real, but right kind of thing. And so it's become like it's like, this is one of those conspiracies that I just don't even want to believe.
Right? No, yeah, I get it. Yeah. Well, did you hear about the recent news about birds dropping dead all over the Midwest recently?
I did hear that. Yeah, I did hear
the tens of thousands. Yeah. So something is strange with them for sure. Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought I would tell you about the shirt before we get started. So anywho, all right, one thing. So I looked at what I did, after our last episode was I intentionally did not listen to the videos that you've been putting out until just yesterday. I went and I listened to a few recent episodes, because sometimes when somebody has like their own stream, like you kind of get information in a similar way that I do, and I like your stuff. I want to keep my stream clear from your stream, right? Not let your stream affect my stream, because it's more fun to compare notes. We haven't been looking too much, right? So I didn't look at anything until yesterday, right? And I find it fascinating that it seems that you've been going through a very similar thing that I've been going through, and actually a couple of other people that I know that are similar to us. And that is
Right.
this extreme exhaustion and this, well, first of all, like very strange things going on with like missing items and like odd occurrences of things not being how they were when you left them and stuff like that, followed by this period of like extreme exhaustion and either not dreaming or the inability to recall dreams in the way
Yeah.
that one normally does, and that
Right.
had been going on for you too. So fill me in a little bit on like what's been going on since we last talked and whatnot. And I listened to some other videos too, but I wanted to start right there.
Yeah, it's almost like just completely blank, like as if I'm dead at night, which is really unusual for me. Because normally I would at least recall some sort of vague memories. If there are dreams I have that I don't remember well, I would remember little snippets. But lately it's just been completely dark, which is completely unusual for me, like nothing, not a thing for days on end. And that kind of concerns me since I've been such a like vivid dreamer, like pretty much my whole life. So whatever it is, it's unusual for me.
Yeah. Have you did in the fact that it was sort of over, like came with this exhaustion? What did the exhaustion feel like for you? I'm just curious, like if you could describe. There's different kinds of exhaustion, right? Can you tell me what's been going on?
It's it was like something attempting to siphon my energy type feeling, which isn't good because you've got to protect yourself from that. But it was something heavy, like a weight that's just like pushing down really, really hard, and you can't like seem to lift even a finger for like days on end. And now there'd be periods in between that where I would be more normal, but it just really felt like a very heavy weight on your shoulders. But it wasn't like a weight of melancholy or sadness necessarily. It was just something like trying to suppress you.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you have any, just out of curiosity, did you have any like unusual body pains or discomforts during this period of time?
Yes, I did. But I don't, yeah, I did for sure. Like weird headaches and ears, ringing in the ears. I had that quite a bit last few weeks.
Okay.
Yes. Odd things with my eyes and sinuses. Yeah, definitely some physical symptoms.
Okay, so this matches up to a couple of people that I'm very close to that like, do this same kind of work that we do, whether we think of it as work or not, right? And like, I think like, so for many, many years in my life, I either didn't dream or was black, like, or couldn't remember my dreams, right? This also lines up with what I have referred to in the past, and I don't know how I would refer to it now, as like my years in use in MK kinds of projects, right? And so like, I don't know if it was really just like, I was just being taken out at night, memory wiped, whatever, and that's why there was nothing. Or if it was more, like I wasn't necessarily being taken out of my home or my bed, but just sort of into the astral realm, and that there was something sort of monitoring that or playing with it or controlling it and then wiping the memory, right? Or, like wiping the sort of memory after. Or if it could also be like, because I'm coming to a more neutral space with some of this, like instead of just jumping to the idea that like somebody's just doing this to me, right? Like my own, like that there could be another explanation, that this is just something I do and these are sometimes side effects, right? So I think there's like a new level of sort of a thinning between the realms, a new level of like astral or ethereal engagement that's been happening over the last couple of weeks, maybe last few months. and that we're super busy at night. We're out there working in the other layers and the other levels and the other realms. And there's, you know, it's even though it's different, it's not your physical body out like running around at your job or whatever it is. It's exhausting on a different level, and your senses are being used in a different way than we use them out, what we think of in the physical world, but also being used. And then there's like a frequency aspect to it, and there has to be some ramifications of how you feel in your body when sort of your frequency has gone to a different space and then you settle back into this space, right? Just like, you know, when you watch in sci-fi movies, if somebody like dematerializes to teleport, then when they rematerialize, they have some sort of like, you know, problem readjusting kind of thing.
Yes. I like how you put that, because even though my memories have been blank, I totally have been waking up pretty often with the sense that something was going on last night. Like something was happening, like even though it was completely blank, like nothing, I just get this like little feeling like something happened, something's going on. So I think you're spot on about that.
So the kind of exhaustion I was feeling like was like grogginess, like into the afternoon, not just the usual first half hour or hour grogginess, but like till like 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
exactly. But then also like just so tired, like having to lay down a lot, my body hurting everywhere. Like I knew somebody who like when they were who like ran in the marathon, right? And like the day or two after having run in the LA marathon, like they couldn't move, right? They just had to stay home. They couldn't really do anything. They were so exhausted. It was like they couldn't lift a finger, just like what you said.
Right.
Kind of like that. And you don't think like, how is it that I'm going to bed and I'm waking up feeling like I've run a marathon, right? Kind of thing. But that was the feeling I had when I was a kid, right? When I felt like that stuff was going on a lot. And that's been the feeling, right? Like it's been completely like exhausting for like really a few weeks, like maybe even 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden, and I'm just curious to know, what day did it start to shift for you? Because I can tell you're feeling better. What day did it start to shift for you? Because I can tell you're feeling better.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you. I'm gonna say it was 5 days ago.
5 days ago?
About, yeah.
So for me, it was about 3 days ago, right? And somebody else I know, it was about 5 days ago, last week as well. So there's something switching and shifting, right? I don't know if we're just getting into our new sort of circumstances, or if there's like an energetic layer that is like done and you know, we can rest now or something like that, right?
Right. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, definitely things are manifesting quicker as well. Like I think mind made manifest is becoming more of a reality every day. Like things I think about are shown to my face every day now. Whereas before, like years ago, that would have like almost never happened. Like, and then you have the weird AI stuff going on,
right?
Where you would be thinking about something and it would show up on a computer screen. That's happening almost every day now. And that's creepy, and I don't really like that, but it just goes to show like our perceptions are actually really starting to change things around us, and is becoming noticeable, I think.
Yeah. So what you're like, when you first said manifestation, I was like, aha, that's interesting, because the first day things shifted for me, suddenly something that I had been trying to manifest for quite a long time, like there it was, like we weren't even trying that hard that day, and there it was. But one of the things that like a lot of the people like sort of in my friend group and community online here have been doing for like the last year is really tracking synchronicities, right? And we doing what we call playing the glass bead game, which is basically finding the interconnectedness between all things, right? And what you're talking about, okay, you think of something and then it's on your computer screen. That's like that you know, there's a perfectly rational explanation for that, and that is the Google's AdSense AI and all that kind of stuff, right? But let's start to really pay attention to how things spill over into areas that it couldn't possibly be that, right? Like just because you watch, okay, so sometimes it goes in the other direction, right? You see something on the computer and then you're out like walking around in your neighborhood or driving around, and that thing is happening in the real world, having nothing to do with media, right? It goes both ways. It's not like it's always in one direction, right? And how many other people, like when you talk about it to someone else, then it happens to them, right? No matter how dense that person is, even if that's a person that has like no metaphysical giftings or interest or whatever, the moment you tell them that this is going on, within that day, generally, I'll get a call from them saying, or an email or a text or whatever, right? Like it's almost like contagious, like let's just like a virus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
crazy.
The synchronicities are interesting. So pay attention. There's this really interesting book that we've been reading for a long time because it takes me forever to get through books, called Synchronicity. It's by F. David Pete. And it's really quite fascinating. And it's something that I know for sure intelligence agencies and think tanks have not only looked at, but actively use in the way they design programs.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and it has to do with the underlying patterns of the universe and the way things materialize around them.
Uh-huh.
And so you might find the book interesting. And then also the game, the Glass Bead game by Hermann Hesse. That's sort of been the basis for this series that I do. And it's really, really fascinating to see like how many like beads or threads you can pull into your game and start sort of weaving this net of almost like, I'm going to talk about something and then it's going to happen. And then it happens and then someone else will talk about it and it'll happen for them, to the point, right? Like we can actually begin to like weave a reality with our thoughts. And then you begin to wonder, well, what the heck is artificial intelligence actually? Are we doing this? Like they love for us to go, it's them doing it to us and disempower us.
Oh yeah.
Right.
They want to take the credit, but it's not always them. No way.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you may want to check those things out because it's interesting in that realm, since you brought up manifestation, which I wasn't going to ask you about, but that's a huge part of this as well.
I'm going to take that title of that book down later. Yeah, for sure. I'll ask you about it because I definitely will find it. Yeah.
All right, cool. So I wanted to talk about a couple of other things for sure, like in this first segment. And then last time we had said we were going to watch the movie Surrogates, right? And maybe talk about that. And I just watched it the other night. And so maybe we'll talk about that in the second segment and some topics that come up around that. But I had heard you say in one of your videos, like I listened to an interesting dream that you recounted about your you had one about your family, right? And then you also had one about this really weird thing with the babies, the children's bodies and things like that, right?
Oh, yes.
That one. Yeah. And then you had one that you had said you might really like to talk about with me, that was sort of about this scanning thing in the arm. So we have about 40 minutes in this segment before we go to the break. Where would you like to start? What would you like to talk about? I know I'm very verbose and people would like to hear more from you and less from me. So let's start where you want to, because I think all three were kind of interesting, but particularly I think that one was like very personal to you, right? But then the latter two I might have some comments on because they're things that I look at as well, but wherever you'd like to go.
Yeah, well, the one with my family members, that was actually my mom's dream that she told me about.
That's right. That's what,
okay. Yeah. So that was really interesting on its own. I don't remember much details, but one thing that's important to recall is that my stepdad, who she was married to, died a long time ago in 2006, and he was in a wheelchair. And he could walk for a few feet at a time, but he had really serious problems with his legs. And in her dream, she saw him young and running towards her. So I think just that on its own is just really significant. The fact that he was in a wheelchair and now he's running towards her. And she was really ecstatic and happy about that. And that individual himself was a really interesting person with a long history, but that's gonna take like an entire show to talk about just him. So um, yeah, but the dream, I would not even call it. I would call it a partial astral experience.
Mhm.
The one where I was in the cyberpunk type city, futuristic. I remember like almost every detail of this experience, despite the fact that it's been probably about 2 years since this happened. So
So let's
I'll
do
tell
this.
you. Let's start from the beginning.
Let's do
Huh?
this. You go through it in all your detail, because your detail is what I find so fascinating. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna take notes, and then I'm gonna come back at you when you're done. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. So I'm riding a bicycle, like right here on the beach in my local area, and on the sidewalk, and I'm just riding what feels like forever. I just keep going and going, and someone pulls up next to me, and they start talking to me also on the bike, and I don't remember what we chatted about or whatever it was, but as we were going along the beach, it felt like we were going faster and faster and faster, and things started to speed up, and it almost looked like we were going into a wormhole. And suddenly we found ourselves in another place completely. Um, we were in some city, some very, very dark, uh, really kind of hard to describe cityscape that a lot of the buildings were black in color. The streets were black. Um, Everything looked like it was extremely rectangular and geometric, and not there's no contours anywhere in any of the buildings. Everything just sort of looked the same, and there were these neon lights everywhere, really bright pink neon lights. And before I go on, why I even talked about this dream again in a recent video was because I stumbled upon, here's another synchronicity, a music video, because I'm always on the hunt for new music. And it was kind of like that sort of futuristic cyberpunk type setting in the music video. And the city looked really similar to the one in my dream. So
Mhm.
I'm looking at this video, I'm like, dang, they got this place spot on. And this, and the video and the song itself is about robots and AI and control and all this stuff anyway. So we're riding around in this city with these really just unpleasant, dark looking place. And it kind of looked like it was underground,
Mhm.
because I was looking up and there was no sky, there was nothing. It was just black. It
Mhm.
just looked like we were in some kind of chamber or something. Super hard to describe, but we're riding along and we get stopped by two cops on these motorcycle like contraptions, futuristic looking. Um, and they come out and they don't look quite human. They're machine like, very cyborg like. They had these kind of weird neon silvery gray uniforms on, and their eyes look like they had these artificial quality to them. Their faces
Mhm.
look plastic. Um, there were just something really off about them. And so they stopped us and they start like interrogating us. And so the guy in my ride that I was talking to, he had this scan on his arm. Like you see it in a lot of like, dystopian movies, people get scanned on their skin and stuff like that. And so whoever this, by the way, I don't have any recollection of what that person looked like at all. The
So this
one
was
who was
not a real
riding,
friend. This was not a real friend. This was just an imaginary friend in the dream.
I don't know. I
Okay.
really just, I would like, it's almost like I wasn't supposed to see his face, but
Okay.
like, I clearly saw the two cops. Like, I even remember their faces, but this person, I don't have any memory of whatsoever.
Huh.
Like, as far as how he looks like. So So he was able to get his arm scanned, his ID or whatever, and they're like, okay, you can go. So they let him go, and he rides off on his bike or whatever. And then they're like, where is your scan? Where is your barcode or whatever? And I started getting frantic, and like I start panicking because like they were like really in my face, like in a really creepy robotic way. We're like, and I kept looking at my arm. I'm like, hey, where is it? Where is it? And they're like, we can't find it. And they're basically like, they told me, do you know where you are? And I'm like, I don't know. And I asked them what year it was. And this is the craziest response I could ever imagine. This is gonna blow you away. They said, we don't know exactly what year it is because the bankers hold the time. But I could tell you that it's approximately 2086. And so they're like, we're gonna lead you back to your own time. So they kind of escort me to this central square of the city or whatever, and there's this oval looking light portal. It's like shimmering plasmatic type of thing, and they escorted me to this thing, and they're like, all right, here you go, you go in here and you'll return to your own time. And that's when I woke up.
Wow.
Yeah.
All
It
right.
was so vivid and so real. That's why I would have to say it was a partial astral experience because of how intense and real it was. So, yeah. I say partial astral because it's a really complicated subject, because sometimes you can kind of tell when you have a full out of body experience, right? And sometimes you have like a partial where like maybe a portion of your consciousness is out of body and then some is kind of tethered. It's a complicated subject, but I would call it like a 50-50 partial astral experience.
Yeah. So sometimes those ones where you're like when you have
Yeah.
that space between waking and sleeping, where you're not
Yeah.
really asleep, you're not even necessarily trying to go to sleep, but you're laying down or sort of have your eyes closed, and suddenly like you're sort of somewhere else. You still feel the bed. You're still aware of your surroundings, but you're either in something else or looking at something else. I kind of refer to that as like a particular type of like impromptu remote viewing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like you're here and there, like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As opposed to like the full astral experience where like you're pretty much out of your body, right?
Out
Like
of your body, right. Yeah.
you can debate chords or not chords or whatever, right? But like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
all right. So was there any other detail that you wanted to say about the dream, or I'd like to hear before I get into my thoughts about this, like what your sort of analysis is, like when you take yourself out of the experience, because you've obviously, it's been so memorable that 2 years later, you wanted to bring it back around and look at it again. So what are your sort of like your thoughts about it? Like even maybe your wildest ones, right? Like if you like go way out there on a limb and make up something totally crazy, like what do you think was going on here?
Oh, I think I just saw a future version of the Earth where the surface was destroyed and they went underground and became cyborgs. Which I've had dreams, a number of dreams of the surface being destroyed, and we
Mhm.
discussed this last time as well.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think this is the same timeline as what I witnessed with the other dream where I was at work and I saw the sky filled with dust. I think this is another timeline, actually. This is another timeline of Earth, and basically that's where we ended up by 2086, is this depressing, dingy, dark, depressing underground city where we're hardly human anymore and we're just basically robots. That's my thoughts on it, and I think that's why I was shown that. I think that's a road we don't want to go down, basically. Even though there were things about it that look kind of cool and appealing and interesting, but it just seemed very cold and this place, the place just felt like it had no spirit or soul at all.
Yeah.
No spirit or soul at all. Like it was just gone. Yeah.
All right. So first I want to ask you, do you ride a bike?
I used to ride a lot. Sorry. I used to ride a lot when I was a kid. I loved biking. I used to do a little BMX and all of that, but not really anymore though. I mean, I did a few years back, a little bit, but probably until I was about like 15, I regularly rode a bike. Yeah.
So when you had this dream because it was a couple of years back, was that during a period of time when you were riding your bike?
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't actually, no.
Okay. So one of the things, so I'm going to start analyzing now, and whenever, like, I'm going to go back and forth with you on some of this stuff. So every day I exercise out here on the lake, right? And I generally run, sometimes I walk, right? And I have fascinating experiences almost every time. But one of the things that I have noticed is that there is a difference between the bike riders and the walkers or the runners, right? There is a different energy about the bicyclists,
Right.
Right? Some more interesting than others, right? But they seem to be marching to a different tune. Obviously, they're going faster than the people who are walking or running, but there's something energetically different just about them. Something about the wheels turning and the way like bicycle chains have to align. It's kind of like cogs in a gear, right? And if we think about like the earth in some ways, sometimes as like a machine, right? Like you see sometimes when you look at people's like esoteric or alchemical more graphing of what the earth or the experience is really like, you see stuff that looks very like cyberpunky or particle accelerators or machine kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I have noticed there's something unique about the bike riders. My podcast partner, Michael Wan, loves to ride his bike around the lake or the river. And that's when he does like his best sort of like pulling information out of the ethers, right? I had this experience with a guy riding his bike out here, okay, that I'm 100% sure he was a time traveler, right? And so what's fascinating is we're running on the trail. I think you were with me that day. I can't remember if you were with me or if I told you about it. And there's this guy coming at me, right? And I first recognized him because he looks a little bit like this friend of Laura's who's like a shaman guy. He had a similar look, but it wasn't him, right? But he had this tattoo right here that had like a ton of energy coming off of it. Like that was the point, like for me to sort of see that. But he was very, very particular looking, right? Like you would not forget this person, right? And he was moving really fast. Like he was bicycling really fast and the trail was really busy that day and he didn't hit anybody. Like it was like he went in and out. And the point was for me to see him and to see this tattoo, right? So I did, and I was like, I noted in my head immediately that there's something different about this person than everybody else out here. When I say different, I don't mean that like he looks different or anything like that. I mean, like he is something different than everyone else, right? Like, you know. So then I can't remember if it was that same day or like another day later in the week where I'm on a different part of the trail, and there's this mural that has all of these people on it. And there's one that looks just like him, right? I can't remember the name right now because it's apparently a famous person in certain kind of like ethnic, tribal kinds of history for a group of people. I can't remember his name. I had it up on my phone the other day. But this picture on the wall looks almost exactly like the guy that I saw, but the guy in the mural is dead, right? His name is Raoul something or other. His name is Raoul.
Wow.
Okay. And in the mural, it's like from here up, but I could see a little bit of like some energetic thing coming off of his chest in the mural, right?
Wow.
So this person is dead now, and even like by the time he became very famous, he was older and white haired. This person I saw on the trail was one of these. He had no gray hair. It was black hair, dark hair, right? Dark long hair pulled back in a braid, exactly like the picture. but was like timeless. Like he looks to be, I don't know, you know, some people who are timeless, like it's hard to tell if they're like 25 or 50. He had that kind of look, but he was not old and he was not dead, right? He was just so vibrant. And I just started to be like, okay, this is really fascinating, right? Like, and I'm doing all this stuff around time travel. I'm like, all right, I didn't know at this time who this person was on the wall. I found out later. Like, I can't remember if later the name was added and that was how I knew, or if I noticed the name, which I hadn't before. So I started playing with this idea that like time goes, also because of another experience I had with a mural in the same area, that like these murals, people are actually emerging out of these murals. People are creating this art, and then that sort of brings this person sort of into existence, or acts as a portal through which this person can come into this timeline, right? Or it literally could be that this is a person who used to hang around this area and ride his bike around this area back when he was younger. And the rivers, because rivers are associated with time and time travel, like the timelines converge here, and I was able to see into his timeline, and that's why it was like so strikingly different than everybody else on the trail. Aside from just his energy as an interesting being, like maybe I was just tapped into a different time, like, you know, kind of thing, and seeing that, right? But he was riding his bike and he was riding it fast, and you were talking about you were riding your bike until you sped up and sped up and sped up, and then you were in a wormhole to another time.
Exactly. That's exactly what it looked like. Yeah.
Okay. So this guy, but there was no question in my mind. This guy's a traveler. This guy is either like an interdimensional traveler or a time traveler. And he is not like everyone, like one of these things is not like the other, you know, with all the people that are out there. And it's stuck with me till I look at that mural every day, and I hope to see this guy again. But like, it was one of those things that like, I have no questions about my experience. I witnessed somebody who was not from here, right? Or not from now. And so moving on with this, do you have any thoughts about what I said?
No, I just think it's incredibly interesting, especially murals and street art, things like that. Over the last few months, I've actually been more focused on and paying attention to street art and murals myself. So that's some synchronicity with me right there, because it's something I was never really all that interested in until recently.
Me too. I'm like obsessed with it. Like how obsessed, like I drive her nuts. Like when we go out exercising, I have to stop and examine this and look at the angle that it is and compared to the other one and whatever. One of the things I'm starting to think is that what we think of as tagging and having to do with gangsters is really has nothing to do with that. These people are interdimensional travelers who are leaving like tags where they came through, so they can either leave a trail for people who are looking for them, or so they can find their way back to their timeline.
Interesting. That is so incredible. I love that.
And then the murals as possible like portals or drawing something into existence, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like creating it and then letting a reality emerge from that. But also like I had this really interesting, I think that like murals are meant to make an imprint on our mind that we don't recognize, right? Like you look at it, you're like, oh, that's cool. But there's all these little details in there that your mind sort of records and has an effect on you for a lengthy period of time. Like there's this mural here that seems to encapsulate in it everything that like was of symbolic importance to me for a period of like 21 years, right? But the mural didn't exist until after those 21 years. But I had a time travel experience in which I'm starting to suspect I saw the mural, and that's why those symbols became important to me, right? So I think we would be smart to really start paying attention to have you ever been to an area too where it's like there's a lot of energy there, like whether it's dark or good energy, a lot of energy, and there's always a lot of graffiti around those areas, like that kind of shit. Like, I'm obsessed with that right now. Like I have been since we moved back to Austin.
No, especially like in New York, which is just filled with graffiti, and I lived there for many years, and yes, there's a lot of places with high energy and a lot of graffiti there.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. So the bicycles speeding up into somewhere else, right? So suddenly you were in a different city. Like coincidentally, right before I got on with you, I was doing a little work on this book here that a mystery person sent me called Invisible Cities. So that would be cities that like I haven't read it yet, but that
Right.
coexist here with us that we can't see until we're in them, kind of thing, right? Or
Right.
that there's something sort of else that are right here with us, right? And then I also thought of Dark City. Have you seen the movie Dark City?
Oh, yeah, and that's another synchronicity right there, because I've been talking about that movie for a few months now and thinking about that movie too, because of the current jab rollout. If you could recall in the movie, they had, they were getting injections to put them to sleep. So they would wake up in a different, things would be rearranged and changed in the city after they would wake up. Really interesting.
Yeah. So Dark City is something that's come up over and over for me in my various shows with people over the last several months. And it is, I think it's a thing, right? It's the Rufus Sewell was the star of the movie, and Rufus Sewell is a very interesting character. If you look into him, he's kind of fascinating. But I do like, when I think of, there's a lot of parallels I've drawn between Dark City and the activities that were sort of going on there with the like underground party scene, particularly in Los Angeles, where I spent a lot of time in it, right? There are a lot of interesting stuff going on. But there was a revival of the movie Dark City, because it was like pretty old movie, right? There was a revival of it a few years back that had like underground parties basically celebrating it in a number of cities around the world, because it's unclear in the movie what city you're in, right? And I think it could be any city. So maybe this idea of like cities as like almost like temporal control hubs, right?
Yeah.
Right? Is kind of interesting. That's what they're doing down there, right? At night there. And then reset it. The day seems normal, and every night reality gets sort of reset with a few small tweaks and adjustments and whatnot, right?
Yeah, and it turns out, in the movie they were on an alien ship the whole time, and their overlords were a bunch of aliens doing experiments on them, which is just, I at the very minimum, there is definitely a timeline of Earth where that is happening. I don't know if it's this one, but there definitely exists one. So
yeah. Okay. So then you also talked about the buildings being very geometric and rectangular and square and harsh. And to me, that like, I look at a lot of buildings now and I'm like, that's not a building, that's a piece of technology. I mean, yeah, sure, it's a building, right? But that's like part of some sort of either computer motherboard or what I'm starting to refer to as interdimensional architecture, right? Where basically that building is sort of a connector between the different realms, right?
I heard about that theory before, where people would compare motherboards to cities, and there are a lot of similarities. So it could be, and it could be an energetic source for something out of this dimension, which makes total sense.
Yeah. So, all right. And then you talked about the neon lights. And so then when you were describing these buildings and the neon lights, and then you talked about having found a music video that was like, holy shit, this was just like my dream, right? Can you tell me what the music video was?
Yeah, it's okay, I remember the band name, I just don't remember the title of the song. Crap.
What's the band name?
Oddko, I think. I don't know if it's
like Oddko.
The letters Oddko.
Okay.
And they don't have a whole lot of songs, so if you put that in on YouTube, you'll notice the screenshot is like of a kind of like a person's face, like a robot's face, and I can't remember the title. It's easy to find though.
All right.
And actually, that the other videos of that same band are really interesting and have a lot of symbolism. Not just that video, but the few other videos that they have made are incredibly strange and esoteric. On on their own as well.
All right, so we just pulled up their YouTube channel, and this is fascinating on a number of levels. I'm going to shelf this for another conversation, maybe with you, because this could become the entire show if we did this. But this is fascinating. And so like, this is crazy, really. Okay, so we'll shelf that and we will return to this. I was gonna ask you, I was thinking, is this city underground? And then you said the very next thing that you said was the city may have been underground. So it made me think of Dark City again, but also Westworld, right? Like Westworld, both in the early seasons, they have these sort of underground base where everything in there is black with blue neon lights sort of around it. And then in the third season, I think it is, they're supposedly out about in the real world, but everything is dark, like what you're talking about, and technological, and there's all sorts of neon lights in the city, and they have all these really weird, like, while and of course in Westworld, like a lot of them are hosts, they're not real people, right? They're sort of cyborgs, as with surrogates, which we're going to talk about in the next hour. But there's these like flying cop cars that are like these weird little machines and stuff like that. They're not normal cop motorcycles or cop cars. So I was thinking about that when you were talking. And you said they had plastic faces and like artificial eyes, right? Which again, surrogates, which we're going to talk about in the second hour. But I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
I never seen Westworld though. It's interesting you brought that up. I'll have to look into that. I never seen that show.
It's a really good show. It's dystopic and disturbing on a number of levels. It's very good. They've had 3 seasons. I think there's a 4th one coming at some point. But yes, definitely I recommend watching it. And then when you started talking about this person that you were riding with, that you couldn't see their face, right?
Right.
Like, what do you think about the idea that it was also you, or like some sort of copy or clone of you, or like a cyborg version of you, or the you that took the ship or whatever?
Oh, that's interesting. That is a really interesting, I've never thought that, but that is very, very plausible. That is, because it could have been my future self showing me, a dark road we could be going on, for example. You're right.
So,
That's a really good observation. However, my gut feeling tells me that it was not me.
all right, there's something I'm going to show you in the beginning of the second hour that I'm going to put over there because it's a little bit sensitive, the topic. So I'm going to show you that before we get into our conversation about surrogates, but it'll sort of blend into it. That may, I don't know if it will change your mind, but it's not my interest to change your mind, but that is a way that like you can see what I'm thinking here. Right. I'm going to show you something and you're going to be like, wow, that is fucking weird, dude. All right. All right. Okay. Yeah. So then you asked what year it was, and they said that they didn't know because the bankers keep the time.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
That's about as disturbing as it gets, because they keep everything now. They're buying the whole world with their inflated fake currencies. So they're taking over everything. I mean, they probably always controlled everything. So if they control time as well, or the future, for example, then that just makes things disturbing on a whole new level. I don't know how bankers, like he specifically said bankers, and that's just so odd and off-putting to me. It's like, it doesn't sound very scientific, right? The bankers hold the time. Like you would think they would say, oh, the nuclear physicists hold the time, right? But no, it was the bankers.
So there's a couple of things that like people, we don't like, we all know this on a certain level, but it's good to remind ourselves, right? Like when you get paid, generally, you're getting paid for your time at work, right? Like, right?
Yeah.
So like time is money, right? Like there's a saying, time is money, but there's a few things that we talk about in a particular way. You spend money, you waste money, right? Like that kind of thing. You invest money, you spend time with people, you waste time doing nonsense things, you invest time in a project, right? Like
Yes.
time, energy, and money, we speak about them in a very particular way. And I would, you know, like money is really a representation of energy or time, right? Sure, it can be goods, but generally the goods are either something somebody spent time making or something somebody spent time harvesting or producing or whatever it is, right? The sweat kind of thing. So this place in the future, I think maybe the illusion of money has been removed, and it's literally like your dealings with the bankers have to do with like how much time you get. Like time begins, like instead of us having our world run by money, it's going to be run by time. Did you ever watch Mr. Robot?
Maybe, possibly. It sounds familiar.
Okay, so White Rose, the sort of cross-dressing hacker that is like the you know, the villain of the show, she's completely, all she's interested in is time. She doesn't care about money at all, right? All the other people that she's sort of interacting with, it's really seemingly about money or information or data. And she is completely trying to control, like when she meets with somebody, she's like, you have 27 seconds. Like she'll only give them like this many seconds. She has it measured out before she meets with them. Just like when you go someplace, you're like, here, I've got 20 bucks. I'm not spending any more than 20 bucks. What can I get for 20 bucks, right? You have 27 seconds and that's it, right?
Wow.
So good.
That's incredible. No, that is absolutely, you're absolutely correct. Time is money. And I'm just really blown away right now. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So then the last thing that you mentioned is that they take you to this square where there's a portal, right? And you're going to go back to your time. All right.
Yes.
So now let me just see if I can find it, because I have about 7 million windows open on my my computer at any given time. And there's one, the particular one that I'm looking for. And let me just see if it's here or if I have it in a different window. There's a very particular, let me just, the reason that I have to find it instead of search it again is because I didn't expect to talk about this or I would have had it ready, but there's a very particular specific picture that I brought up with this thing here. Let me see if just one more peek here. Sorry if this is boring while I look, but I think this is going to be interesting to look at. Shit, I can't find it. Where is it? Hold on. I left it open in 10. There it is. Got it. Okay. So you were talking about this shimmery oval thing, right? In the middle of the square. And they use this to send you back to your timeline. I don't know how familiar you are with like Stargates in cities. If you've ever watched like Chad Stumpke's presentation about Hart Plaza in Detroit and the Stargate there.
Yeah, I've seen it in sci-fi shows and things like that. It didn't look quite like anything I've seen in any show. It was a bit different. Like it was like for example, Stargate, it's just like this relatively small circle. Like this thing was massive. Like it was probably like 20, no, it was probably like 50 to 100 feet high.
All right.
And it was very oval, like very, very oval.
Okay, so this is a little different, but something sort of similar. I'm going to show you this. All right. So I might even share this story that somebody said and protect his name. Okay, but I'm going to show you this first. So somebody drew my attention to this that's called the Bean in Chicago. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah. I've actually been there and seen it.
All right. So now I thought looking at all of them, the iterations are interesting, right? And the fact that it does shimmer, it also reflects, which one of the other things I look at with some of these buildings that have mirrored surfaces is that the reflection of other buildings and the sky in them are like a technology or a magic all their own, like some kind of scrying mirror or something like that, right? But this one in particular stood out to me because I have identified this pattern that is on the ground here, but also reflected in the bottom end of the bean here, right? As like, this is sort of this design, it's called a quatrefoil or a 4-lobe shape, is related to time travel or like realm
Wow.
penetration, realm or dimensional penetration. And there's, we can get into that with, some other time. It's also, if you look at it in certain ways, let me see if I can pull it up here. So like, if you look at the, let's see, Templar's Cross, what is that? Flask. Okay. Let me see if I can find what I'm thinking of. All right. If you look at it in some iterations, I want this in particular. Okay. So, right, that there's the 4 lobe shape in between there, and the inverse of it is the Templar's Cross.
Right.
Talking about. All right. And I think this interdimensional or time travel or this portaling ability is largely what secret societies are really about, right? That they're sort of guarding those secrets, okay?
Right.
And that's all over the ground here, reflected underneath this beam in the middle of a square in the middle of a city.
Wow.
Okay, now I'm going to take you, give me a second, let me end this so I can protect people's privacy real fast. But this was the story that was shared with me by a patron who had looked at some of my glass bead game episodes where we talk about the synchronicities and the interconnectedness of all things and whatnot. And we also talk a lot about like time travel or dimensional travel. Let's see, there we go, in these episodes, right? So he had watched some of these episodes and then he went to Chicago and had an experience, right? So I'm gonna not say his name, but I'm gonna read to you what he wrote to me, okay? I wanted to share an experience that my girlfriend and I had on our trip. I'm still getting through the episodes you've sent me, so I'm not sure if there are any connections, but regardless, the events made me think of you, and especially how you've talked about your trips and the simulation showing itself to you and just overall odd encounters. So the trip was for her birthday and it was just the 2 of them. At first, they started syncing so much on the drive and into the city, right? They've been together for many years and never have they like said the same thing so many times at the same time, right? And Laura and I were having that same week, right? Where we literally would say the same thing like I'd be thinking something and I'd decide to say it at the same moment she said it, or I'd think it and then she'd say it.
Right.
It got to be too much by the end of the night, but it was comical. Other things like this, there was a homeless man singing 2 of her favorite songs on 2 different instances of walking past him, right? We didn't see, right? Then she said, he said these things were too choreographed to be natural, and we started to notice it. Street signs with names of our family members, streets backs home with the same names. More and more of these mild synchronicities were adding up, and we were moving through the city and time so fluently. Neither of us are familiar with Chicago, and yet we made it to events earlier, right on time, just following these synchronicities, okay? There were so many small instances that both of us recognized and talked about it, that it was spooky, but we rolled with it, okay? Right? So, but here's what he really wanted. So like he goes to Chicago, he's watched the glass bead game episodes, and we talk about synchronicities, what we were talking about earlier, how you say something, you hear something, and then you see it and whatnot, right? Okay, right. This is what he really wanted to talk about. I would assume, since you've taught me a lot about the topic, that you're familiar with the bean in Millennium Park, AKA Cloud Gate, AKA Stargate, portal to somewhere. Well, that bean is the only thing in that damn city that you can't get within 25 feet of. This was the only monument blocked off. The rules on COVID, so what he's meaning is that it didn't used to be, but now it is because of COVID. Like he's basically saying that because of COVID, he couldn't get near the bean, okay?
What? Okay.
The rules on COVID were pretty much wear a mask. Nowhere else in the city did people care or enforce something like the fencing off of the cloud gate. Ironically, you can stand shoulder to shoulder with someone at the fencing and touch each other and not get COVID, but you can't go near it because they want to protect you.
Wow.
So of course I got to thinking this isn't really about COVID at all, is it? Whether it's for our own good not to travel now, or it's along the lines of the theory where social distancing and the whole lockdowns were a mitigation method to keep our magic in check and not have us know our own power and begin to figure it out. So basically saying that, they want this thing is a portal and you're not, they're trying to protect them from traveling, right?
Yes,
What
yes.
do they know about this time and this gate? Are they reserving it for others? Are they just simply stopping travelers? Is it literally, time travelers, interdimensional travelers? Is it literally closed down like the other international mass transit and borders being closed? I was just coming up with so many theories and I knew I had to share that with you. There is something bigger as to why that's closed, but I kept thinking, above all, how would I travel? Is it that easy, or do I need preparations? Could one accidentally travel? On top of that, something really strange happened with my girlfriend. When she took her pictures at the cloud gate, it wasn't until we got back to the hotel that she says, I really hate these pictures you took of me. And she isn't self-conscious at all. So I came over because I wanted to comfort her. He says,
Okay.
Emily, these pictures were not her. It was freaky. She looked 20 or 30 pounds heavier in the face, and her eyes did not look like her eyes. It wasn't sunny out, so she wasn't squinting. So it wasn't just a bad picture. We both agreed that some version or something was phasing in and altering that picture. Either I captured a version of her from another reality, or even more spooky, something was fucking with her and it was coming out of that gate. So we ended up
Wow.
talking a lot of woo from that point, and she wanted to delete the pictures to clear it and push back on whatever it was. Ultimately, we went back on our last day and got redemption shots for her, but we also approached that gate with a whole new perspective and intention. And I think in an odd way, we did what we were supposed to. It just sort of completed our trip and we left for home right after, right? And instead of, there was a few other things he said to me sort of personally there, right? But
Wow.
that's pretty, right? I was just, that thing is interesting, and they have everybody blocked away. You can't get close to it, right? But I imagine that for people who are aligned with the right frequency to travel, and this gentleman definitely is, right? He definitely has something special about him, or something that sort of je ne sais quoi kind of thing, right? Like that there's still going to be edge effects on the side edge of the energy field, right? And it sounds like he stepped right into that. But it's amazing that you can't, you see those pictures, people are walking under it, they're playing inside of it, but now you can't go near it because of COVID.
Wow.
Right?
That is incredible. Yes.
So it would be interesting if some of these monuments, right? Because there seem to be at least one in almost every major city that has some story about it or some kind of thing. Think about when we were being locked in our homes for a year, what was going on in all these places, right? Remember, at a certain point in California, they started instituting a curfew, right? You weren't supposed to leave your house after 10 o'clock at night. Right.
Yeah.
So right. So it's just like, what were these things being used for? Who was coming? Who was going?
Yeah.
What's going on? Your thoughts?
My thoughts are kind of sinister. I think that I think that they were setting up for something to do with a future war, maybe. Some kind of sabotage or sleeper cells being placed in certain. It's not related to. I don't think it was for those specific reasons. Maybe there were time traveling elements, but I think it was some kind of sinister plot to maybe set up sleeper cells or something. I mean, I know that sounds bad. That's just really what I think. For a future conflict or something, a future invasion or conflict, which I think they've been planning for a long time. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, that would be the sort of suspicious mind of a Russian for sure. Right? Yeah, no, I mean, but even within that, like we could be at a place where the war is between dimensions or between timelines.
Oh, yeah.
Literally have, penetration from other time. If you've watched like Tenet or things like that, the way they puncture time to the other side and all of that stuff, right? So
right. Yeah, it could be. Absolutely. I mean, it's all connected, right? It's all a big spider web anyway.
Yeah.
So everything that happens is related. So if they were during lockdown setting up sleeper cells or activating something or preparing future cyber attacks or something, then in between that, there's interdimensional help, of course.
So anyway, when you talked about this oval I understood it was a little different than this, but the similarity was striking. And then not being able to sort of see this person, right? And him
Yeah.
having this experience of like, you know, his girlfriend not looking like herself and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
anyhow, I thought that was kind of interesting. All right,
Yeah.
let's wrap up this segment and move over into the patron segment, where I'm going to sort of share with you why I think you may have been talking to another version of yourself, possibly.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about the movie Surrogates. Before we go, let people know where they can find you.
You can find me on my small little YouTube channel called Dreams and Other Stuff. I'll talk to you on there. I always look at the comments and reply. So if you're interested in talking to me or watching some of my dreams and stuff, it's a simple name, Dreams and Other Stuff.
All right, guys,
Yeah.
you can join us at patreon.com/offplanetmedia or emilymoyer.locals.com for the next segment, and we will see you over there. All right.